Let's continue on our journey. All right, so we're going to continue talking about compressors here. And so with this compressor, essentially, what a compressor does, like I said before, is it just automatically turns volume down. Volume up, volume down, volume up, volume down, like this. So what we want to do is we want to make it so the snare drum is a little bit quieter every time it hits. So in a compressor, we have our threshold here is the level where the compressor starts to turn things down. There's two main parts to a compressor, the threshold and the ratio. The ratio sets how much the compressor turns it down, and the threshold sets where it starts to turn it down. So I got my compressor, my snare drum here. Let me turn off my, there we go, my compressor, my snare drum. And if I turn my threshold all the way down, but I leave my ratio set 1 to 1, nothing is going to happen. Watch what happens. Listen. Nothing happens. The reason why is because even though my threshold is set all the way down, my ratio, which tells me how much compression is actually going to be applied, how much it's going to turn the level down, there's nothing happening here. So let's go the other direction. If I turn my ratio all the way up, but I don't put my threshold at all, listen to this. Nothing happens. And the reason why nothing is happening now is because even though my ratio is all the way up to 100 to 1, which is basically a limiter, the sound is not reaching the threshold, so it's not being triggered to turn down at all, right? So a compressor is a balancing act between your ratio and your threshold. Usually ratios are set pretty low, like around 3 or 4, or even less, 2. And what this basically means is that every decibel over, it's going to turn it down by 2 decibels. Not very much. So it's just a little bit of compression. So it's not turning it down by very much. So, and going over by a decibel is quite a lot. So not turning it down very, very much. So what we're going to do here is we're going to balance this between the threshold and the ratio. So hit go. I'm going to hit my threshold down. Now we're going to start to see this little orange line over here on the left. This little orange line on the left is showing us how much ratio, how much compression is being applied. It's the gain reduction. So the more this line goes down, the more compression we're hearing. And you can hear it too. You can hear it just got softer. Let me turn this ratio up a little bit. Put this, so there's our snare drum, like natural sound of our snare drum. Turn this down. And right now you can't hear very much. You can see it's only turning it down by 3 decibels, which most people are not going to be able to hear that well. But if I bring it down a lot, right, we start to get rid of that snare drum entirely. So that's what our compressor is doing. Now, if we look over here on the left, in Pro Tools, Logic and Pro Tools both have the same feature where you can see your gain reduction right on the track. So as soon as you put a compressor onto the track, you're going to see the gain reduction right here next to it on the level meter. So there it is. We can see that. And we can see it's hitting around -6, -7, which is quite a bit of compression actually. Now the gain turns everything up after it's been compressed. So let's say I like the sound of the snare drum, but it's too soft. But I like the way it sounds. So I can turn this up. So now we can hear that sound louder. And that's what my gain does. The gain takes all that compressed sound and just turns it up. Now I just want to put a full disclosure here right now. I'm not a huge fan of the snare drum sound, but again, I'm just overdoing things so you can hear what it's going to sound like. So there we got that. Now if I turn my ratio up, it's going to crush that snare drum sound down even more. Hear how it's like making it more smacky sounding. But if I turn my ratio down, now we're just back to our original snare drum sound. It's just louder. Okay. Now, here's something that's really important to keep in mind for your when you're compressing things. Is compression really? There's two ways to use compression. There's a way. The one way is like a natural compression. The natural compression is all you want to do is just have it so it turns the level down a little bit. So when it gets really loud, it just turns it down for you. And this is a very gentle compression. It's for things like vocals and stuff like that. You have a very gentle compression. So when the singer gets louder, it just turns them down a little bit. Then you might have a compression that's actually shaping the sound. You want to really change the sound of what you're going for. And that's going to be a compression that's really based around the sound that you're trying to hear, not about the loudness, but about the sound. So for example, if I want this snare drum just to be controlled, so if somebody hits it really hard, but I don't want to change the sound of the snare drum, I'm going to use less compression. And I turn it up here. And you can see it's compressing it, but it's not compressing it. It's like 3 dB around there. Not that much. And it still sounds like the natural snare drum. But let's say that I don't want that natural snare drum sound. I want it to be like more of a smacky snare drum sound. So what I'll do is I'll bring this compressor down quite a lot. And I'll turn up my attack. And I'll turn down my release. Turn up my ratio. And now pull the overall sound up. And you get like a magic area in here where you can hear the smack of it. And that's a really weird sound. I don't like that sound, but maybe you do. Maybe you like that sound. Make sure I'm not clipping my output here. You can see it's barely clipping it, which is actually okay. We don't need to Pro Tools actually clips a little bit ahead of when you can hear it clip. So now I've got this totally different snare drum sound that's meh for me, but again, you can hear it a lot. And that's what compressors can do. Compressors can kind of make that sound. They can change the sound quite a lot. Now, this Pro Tools compressor does not have a mix knob on it. It doesn't have a mix function on it. A lot of compressors nowadays, plug-in compressors, do have a mix functionality. This one does not. Let's go ahead and grab a compressor that does have a mix functionality. And I think, let's see if I can remember which one. What's the knee? That's a good question. The knee, what it does is it sets the compressor to start compressing even before it reaches the threshold level. So here, just take a look at this real quick. So what's going to happen is you see here, here's my level of how loud things are. And when the level goes up like this. And what happens is once I hit this line right here, this line here, it's going to flatten it out. So it's going to hit it and it's going to flatten it out right there. And if I adjust my threshold, see how it goes up higher, right? So it's going to hit a louder level before it flattens it out. Okay. Well, the knee, what it does is it puts a wider knee so it bends that curve. So actually, as you get closer to the threshold, it starts to compress it a little bit in here. So it smooths out the compression. And the knee is really good for things like vocals and stuff that you want to sound natural. If you want to have natural sounds, you're going to use a soft, what they call a soft knee, more of a curve. But if you want a really compressed sound, if you want to hear the compressor, A lot of times if you want to make drums like punchier and stuff like that, you want to hear that compressor, then you'll have what they call a hard knee, which is, and you can see right there, see it's like this like hard corner, and a soft knee is more of a gentle, gradual corner. And it's going to be really hard to hear that, but basically what it does, it just makes it smoother, so you don't hear the compressor as much. That's what the knee is. Wow, okay. So, there's that. We got that sound there. Let's go ahead and put an EQ on here, and I'm going to go ahead and just use the Pro Q3 again, just because we're talking about EQs. We're talking about all the same ones I just used a second ago. So here's our Pro Q3. And the Pro Q3, we can see the reason why I like this one is because it lets us see the signal. And I just click here on the yellow line, and I click and I drag it up and down, and it automatically puts an EQ point for me. So if I want to pull up the mid frequencies here, and we can see right here is my frequency where the Q point is, and I can move it around. I can also go down here in the bottom. I can move this around here, this like knobs down here, and I can change my frequency by left and right, and I can change my gain up and down, and I can change the width with the Q like this. So there's all sorts of different adjustments, and you can see these are kind of connected here. These two are connected, and I can disconnect them so they don't affect each other like that. So I can adjust my Q. So with a wider Q, you can see here with a wider Q, it's affecting more frequencies in here. And with a narrower Q, it's affecting less frequencies. So what this would sound like, this one's going to sound more, if I crank it hard enough, it's going to sound like more whistly almost. You hear how it like takes that bop, bop, bop. It's like that real specific frequency. And if I change my frequency here, it's going to change the note. Right? It's like this weird sound. It sounds like somebody's like popping their lip. Like that kind of thing, right? So generally, you don't want it to sound like that. That's not a great sound. If I widen the Q, what it's going to do is it's going to widen the frequency range out so it doesn't sound like that so much. It starts to affect all the frequencies. Right, so that's one of the reasons I like this one here is because you can actually see the frequencies adjusting. Also, another reason why I like this one here, it's harder to see on this one. Let's go ahead and look at the kick drum over here. You can see my different frequency ranges in here. So if I wanted to boost my, I'm just going to get rid of all these. If I wanted to boost my low frequencies, I can mouse over this section here, and it shows me the peak. And I can say, all right, cool. I can turn off the notes. It won't tell me the notes if I don't want it to. It just tells me the frequencies. And now I can grab this and I can adjust that frequency. I can go over here and say, oh, let's grab this one. And I can see the waveform, how it works. If you are not using Pro Q 2 or 3, you're really missing out. It's probably one of the best EQs for general EQing. It doesn't have a sound. It's a very digital EQ. It doesn't have a sound to it. It doesn't like sound like nice. And like people talk about like, oh, this EQ sounds warm, or this EQ has like a feel to it or something like that. This one doesn't. This one's just great for general EQing. It's like the EQ, it's like the scalpel, you know, for producers. It's like goes in there and does all the things. You can do so much with it. such a cool EQ. Big fan. And you can also use it to figure out like if you're doing like an electronic dance track or something like that, and you can oh, something sounds kind of weird. Well, your kick drum may be the wrong frequency for your bass, the key of your song, or something like that. So you can get in here and you can kind of tailor your kick drums to sound the right frequencies for stuff, and you can see things really easily. Like down here, you can see like, oh, this one here is A sharp 2, and I can click it so it's right on line there. Boop, there we go, D6. I can move these around so they're right perfectly in tune with stuff. So you can do some neat stuff with this. You can also like put a frequency right, if you want to have a kind of a frequency point right here on this note, you can do that. Now I can adjust this so it's like got a specific frequency right there for that note. So Pro Q3 is one of my faves. And then there's some other stuff in that stuff is Pro Q2 has it as well. Pro Q3 has some extra stuff that's not in there. That's kind of, you can make a compressor for each of these bands. I can actually have it be an auto compressor for every single band, which is dope. Big fan of that feature. But that's more advanced, and we're not gonna go there today. It's actually pretty advanced stuff. All right, so. Cool. So that's that. That's your gate and your compressor and your the EQ for those tracks. Now, let me go back up here in the chat and talk about a couple things here. So, Johan a while back says the send setting goes to every channel on the bus, or can you change the setting individually? It might be a dumb question. That's not a dumb question. So, but I want to make sure I'm understanding this question correctly. So, all these sounds are going to this Reverb here. So if I go over here and I unmute all these. Come on. Why? So all these sounds are going to this Reverb here. So it's not that there's a reverb on every single channel, but this reverb is the reverb that's being affected from all the sounds. So if I change this reverb, we're going to hear a totally different reverb sound. So let me just go ahead, change this. Reverb. Let's put in Raum. Not exactly sure what Raum is. Oh, it's Native Instruments. Okay, I've never used this one before. Turn it down a little bit here. Make sure that our mix is all the way up. There we go. Lock that mix. Now the reason why I want this mix to be all the way up is because I've already got my dry signal coming from each individual track. I don't want the dry signal in here. If I adjust this mix, it's no longer going to be 100% wet. It's going to have some of the dry signal in, but I've already got my dry signal over here. So I'm going to turn this all the way up and set the lock. And now we're going to just go through here. And every time I change my preset, it's going to keep this lock on, which is a really good thing. And you can hear all these different, I'm going to turn it up a little bit so we can hear it better. And hear how different those reverbs are, all the different sounds, just because there's one plugin, okay? So it's, every channel is going to this one reverb, so it's changing the individual sound, but it's not, the reverb's not on every single channel, so I can change it for all the drums as a whole. And I hope, Johan, I hope that answered your question. The send setting goes to every channel on the bus, or you can change the setting individually. So now if I want to send less of my snare drum to this ROM sound, I can just click on each individual thing and I can adjust the level, which changes the overall sound, but it's not actually changing the sound, if you know what I mean. Like the sound is different, but I haven't adjusted my reverb at all. I'm just adjusting how much signal I'm sending to the reverb. And actually, let's go over here to View, Expanded Sends, and let's go to here. So now I can just do it all right here. I can see everything right here. You can hear how much that changes if I pull this down. Right, you can hear the change in the sound. Okay. And I can also change the sound by changing the plugin. So I go over here to my plugin, let's go to my reverbs, and let's go in here and go to Valhalla Vintage Verb. I'm a big fan of this one. Go in here to my plates. Nice plate reverb. So I got my drum sound here, and this is a great plate, but it might be a little bit too loud. Now, if I like the levels that I'm sending to it, but just in general it's a bit too loud, what I would do is I would just turn down the return here, this one here. I just turn this one down so it's less loud overall. There it is with more reverb. And I just turn it down, bring it back up slowly. There we go. The thing about this one is that if you just want to turn it down for everything, you turn it on the return. Don't go in here to individual buses and turn it up and down, because then you have to adjust all the, you have to go through and adjust them one by one, which is kind of a waste of time when I can just go here and turn down my return. So that's what we're going to do here. And Martin24 says Realm comes with Pro Tools. No, it does not. Realm comes with its Native Instruments plugin. I think I got it as a free download from them. They were giving it away like a few months ago or something like that. You probably pay for it nowadays, but yeah, this is why it's important to be on mailing lists for stuff, because you get freebies every now and then. All right, so that was Johan's question from earlier. Now let's go to, so why would you only put reverbs on buses? Because I see you putting effects directly on the track. This is DJ Blood Money. It says, why would you put the reverbs on buses and effects directly on the track? Okay, this is a great question. The individual effects are shaping the individual sounds. And this is going to be something that's really important to keep in mind when we talk about subgrouping. Think about this, the kick drum is my kick drum sound. If I go ahead and let's listen to, I'm going to mute these here. Here's my kick drum. I'm going to turn off my reverb. There's my kick drum by itself. Now, if I turn off all these effects, here's what my original kick drum recording sounded like. All right. Too much noise from the other instruments. There's that. Okay. Now, a little bit more pop on the beginning. There you go. And now EQ it a little bit. And there's my new kick drum sound. It's not a lot different, but it's a bit different. So that's the sound of my kick drum. But now I want to take that particular sound, that specific sound, and put that into a reverb hall. So that's what I'm going to go over here, my plate. Now that specific drum sound is going into my reverb. And that's what insert effects do. Insert effects, what they do is they tailor the specific sound. And send effects are you're adding something to that sound. Okay, so my snare drum, same thing. And I got the toms and the overheads. Now all together, this is going to make my drums sound, but I'm tailoring these individual sounds right here first before they go to the reverb. So same thing, let's just listen to that snare drum without the effects. So here's what it sounds like with the effects. no reverb. Let's turn off the effects. I'm holding down Command and clicking them to turn them off like this. You hear how much other sounds we're hearing, all the other sounds we're hearing, all this stuff. I don't want to hear all that stuff. I want to go back here and mute things. Now we're just hearing the snare drum. Hear how poppy it is? That's from the reverb. That's what the snare drum sounded like originally. Super poppy. Right, and here's all my drums together with no reverb sound on them. And now let's put the reverb in. Sounds pretty good. Right? So I hope that answered your question there, DJ Blood Money. And let's see here. Only a few tracks will have things like a compressor, more tracks will have reverb and delays. Okay, so the effects that are on more tracks get sent to aux. Okay. Cool. All right. So there we go. So what is DJ Bloody Money saying? White noise. Why are you saying white noise? What's the knee? White noise. All right. So there we go with these effects. Let's just go through and take a listen to some other sounds real quick. Some of these other insert effects that we talked about before. I'm just going to go ahead and whoops, not that. I'm going to go ahead and open up these other tracks here, the guitars. I'm going to go ahead and put the bass DI. So now, with our drums, we got our drums here. Let's get this bass going. Now that bass, let's beef up that bass sound a little bit. Now I'm going to use this is more of a modern insert effect, but it's actually like a group of inserts in one. And this is like Guitar Rig or something like that. So there's a few different amp modeling plugins out there. Let's look at Guitar Rig from Native Instruments. This comes with Complete. I'm not the biggest fan of Guitar Rig for guitar sounds, but it's okay. So let's just go ahead and use it here. Guitar Rig 5. We're going to go in here and set up with, let's go to bass amps here. And here's a bunch of different bass amp settings. So I'm going to go down here and go to Clean Bass, double click on this, and let's listen to this. Let's just go ahead and solo the bass out. Cool. And you hear how different that sounds. Let's bypass it real quick. So there it was before. And now let's listen to it again with the bass amp on it. A lot different. Sounds a lot better like that. Let's just listen to some of these other sounds. Different sounds have a different feel to them. I'm just going through and listening to these. These are just different settings in here. They're going to be very slight sounds. But in general, it all sounds better than that. That's cool. It's got the low end on it. Cool. All right. So that's what you can do with Guitar Rig. That's a bass amp there. Let's see. Do I have IK Multimedia stuff? I don't have their stuff in here. IK Multimedia makes a really good plugin, but I don't have it in here right now for bass amp stuff. Avid has their 11. I've got 11 Lite here. That's also for guitars and basses. This one, I think this one comes with Pro Tools. I'm pretty sure it does. This is Probably just for guitars right now. Let's just see. Yeah, this looks like it's more guitars than basses. Cool. There's that. Yeah, and you can make this, even though it's for guitars, you can make it still sound much better. So if I put this in with my drums, see how much better that sounds than it did when we first started working with that bass? Let's bypass it. Whoops, sorry, wrong one. Yeah, let's listen to it like this. Right? Yeah, I totally agree. It's sounding really good there, right? So that's like, this is what we call amp modeling plugins. And this is an insert. It goes directly on the track, but it's essentially several effects in one. It's like an amp effect. It's also a cabinet effect. There's some microphone stuff in there. And then like you saw with Guitar Rig, it actually has, you can actually put other like inserts and stuff in there. I really wish I had my IK. I think I've got I should hit them up and have that in here. But it's neat because you can also have like pedals and stuff in here. And if you're a guitar player, then you can do some really neat stuff with this, and you'll enjoy it because you can get them, like, you can play with stuff in here. If we go to the UAD stuff, here's Ampeg, here UAD. The Ampeg stuff is pretty good too. This is all like real bass stuff here. I'm just going to use the B15 in. Let's solo it out real quick. And you can hear as I go through. So if I wanted to sound like this kind of, you know, right? And hear how much that changes things. It just changes things so much. So you can dial in the exact right sound that you want. So that's that one there. Now let's go over here to our guitar plugin, like our guitar channels. And I don't know if y'all remember when I was doing this last week, how I was changing these guitar sounds so much. So what I'm going to do here is just move this back a little bit. We don't need that much. Yeah, let's take a look at, let's see, let's go to this section here. So I'm going to go here. Oh, let's just go up here. That's the kick drum. Okay, cool. So I'm going to go ahead and I think this one here or this one. Yeah. Okay, so I'm going to put a marker there. I think this is like the bridge. I'm not really sure where this is in the song. I'm just going to put bridge. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to take these guitar chords. Let's listen to these guitar chords right here. And I'm going to go ahead and cut these out. And we're going to duplicate this track. Guitar 3 chords. And wait, oh, sorry, that was the wrong. I duplicated the playlist, sorry. Let's duplicate the track. Right click on the track and duplicate the track. Hit enter. There we go. Cool. Oops. Okay, so I got this section here. And now let's listen to this guitar part here. Go ahead and... Now, a couple things. First of all, this one's not as loud as these here, so I'm going to go ahead and turn this one up a bit more so I can see it. I'm using the clip gain to do that. So now let's listen to it. All right, so there's that. Maybe I'll turn this one down a little bit. Oops. Okay, cool. Now, you can hear this like a humming sound kind of going through the whole thing. I don't really hate it, but at the same time, I'm not loving that hum, so I'm going to get rid of the hum. I'm going to use the gate to get rid of that hum. So I'm going to just go over here to my plugins. I'm going to go to gate. Remember, we just did this. So I'm going to go to gate here, expander gate. And I'm going to put this here, and we're going to set the attack. Let's just listen to this. Make sure you have the release nice and long. There we go. Cool. Right, so there we go. So we want to get rid of that little hum bit. Cool. Okay, and you can hear it's like, you know, kind of going away a bit quick. We wanted to hold on for a little bit longer. Now what I can do to kind of smooth this out is let's send the guitar to a reverb as well. Let's just send it over to our drum reverb. Why not? Put everything in the same place. 13 and 14. Cool. And you can hear how it's cutting off there. You're probably not going to notice this, though, in the real song. So let's just leave that alone for a second. Now, let's go ahead and put the widener on it to give it like a nice wide sound to it, okay? And so what I'm going to do here, and this is a plug-in effect. It's not a normal plug-in effect, but it's a plug-in. It's an insert. I'm going to go over here to my plugins. I'm going to go to let's see here. Is it Soundfield? Do they have it in here? Yeah, Soundfield Micro Shift. This doesn't come with, actually, let's just stick the ones that come with Pro Tools. So let's go ahead and put a modulation in here. Let's get a phaser. Let's see, Avid. Let's go to Avid, actually. I'll go to Avid plugins. I may not have loaded it in, actually, for the chorus. Lo-fi, pitch. I didn't install it. I'll have to install it. Okay. Well, I'm going to use a chorus type of effect here. And let's see. Let's go to Sound Toys and see what Sound Toys has for us. I mean, this one here is a good one. I mean, this is one I used last time, though. It's like a micro shift. It's like a shifter thing. It's not exactly a chorus. But let's just use this one again here. And this is going to give it a nice stereo spread. Right. Hear how nice that sounds. I'm going to spread it even a little bit wider. Click on these different ones to hear the different styles here. Let's hear it. Sounds pretty good. Sounds cool. Let's listen to this number 2 style here. Yeah, I like that one. Let's listen to it with everything. Cool, right? And you hear how much better that sounds, and it fits in with everything. And also, you don't notice that it's like kind of cutting out a little bit shaky, because it's buried in the song. So that's like something, you want to try things out by themselves, but you don't want to focus on what it sounds like by itself, because you got to remember there's other stuff in there. And this is especially true when you're EQing things. You don't want to EQ things based around just by itself, because it's going to sound weird by itself. You want to EQ things with how it sounds within the song. And especially a lot of mix engineers, they talk about don't EQ just by itself. And what they're really saying when they say that is, it's not about making it sound good by itself, it's about making it sound good within the song. Now, sometimes it's going to sound good by itself, and what sounds good by itself sounds good in the song, but sometimes it's going to sound kind of weird by itself and sound great in the song. So you have to be aware of that stuff. Next, Paul says, would you ever EQ a reverb? And the answer is absolutely yes. You would totally EQ a reverb. A lot of times I actually EQ my reverb. I take some of the low end out of the reverb. I cut out the low frequencies of a reverb. Sometimes you cut out the high frequencies. For example, this reverb, a lot of reverbs have EQs built into them. See, this one here has a thing that says EQ. And that's very common to have things that say EQ. So absolutely, you can EQ a reverb. I EQ delays, I EQ reverbs all the time. Okay. So let's do this. Let's take a break here. And what we're going to do is we're going to be done with me showing you stuff in Pro Tools, and we're going to come back after the break, and we're going to be in Zoom and talking about stuff in Zoom, because I want to hear your voices. I want to shift things up a little bit and get us all on the same page. So let's go ahead and stop here. Let's take a 10-minute break. Be back at 12:10. Yeah, let's be back at 12:10, 10-minute break, and then we're going to come back and we're going to be in Zoom and on Canvas. It's going to be in Zoom. Limsicle says, is this a paid class? And the answer is yeah. So this is a part of SAE because of the social distancing.